I'm sitting on the front veranda of the ashram hospital. Hospital is possibly a grandiose word for what it is. It's more of a small outpatient clinic. It was commissioned by Bhagavan in the early 1940s, constructed by Annamalai Swami as his final ashram project, opened I think at the end of 1942, and remained here to service the medical needs of the Ramana ashram community for not just the remainder of Bhagavan's life, but for several decades after. When I first came here in the 1970s, this building was a free outpatient clinic for any poor people in the neighbourhood who wanted free treatment, and it was very popular. So it has had quite a long and distinguished history as the place where Bhagavan was treated for his various medical conditions, and in succeeding decades the site where the ashram ran its own free dispensary. Now, Bhagavan was increasingly feeble throughout the 1940s, and in 1949 a small growth was discovered over his elbow. The doctor who was attending him at the time cut it off and didn't think much of it, but it turned out to be a malignant tumour, sarcoma, that spread, and despite the best efforts of innumerable doctors of various different traditions, nothing could be done to prevent the systemic poisoning of his body from the spread of this cancer. Bhagavan's attitude to all this is a marvellous illustration of how he regarded his body and how he simply didn't have decisions in himself about what he should do about his body or what should be done in general about his physical health. After the first operation had proved to be unsuccessful and the growth came back, then the ashram started to take his condition more seriously. Step by step, the level of treatment was ramped up. More and more expert doctors were summoned, various consultations were taking place, more operations were scheduled and done. In all, there were a total of 4 operations, but even after the 4th it was quite clear that nothing was going to save Bhagavan. Bhagavan took absolutely no part in the discussions over what should be done to his body. This sounds very odd, but he didn't seem to think that a decision about whether he should have an operation or not have an operation was his business. It was the devotees' responsibility to look after him, and as 1949 progressed, he submitted to their various treatments, some of which were eccentric to say the least. But one thing you can say about Bhagavan is that he was egalitarian, and he allowed everybody who thought they could do something to have a go at fixing him. At one point a herbalist came along and the ordinary Western medical treatment was suspended while a poultice was put on his arm. Siddha medicine was tried, Ayurveda was tried, homeopathy was tried. Everybody who thought that they could possibly do something was given a try, and Bhagavan was quite happy to let everyone have a go. But his own particular prescription for himself is leave it alone, let it run its course. Now that simply wasn't an option for devotees who could see their guru failing physically. They all wanted to make some sort of intervention to cure him, to bring him back to health. But Bhagavan himself didn't have any attachment to living a particular long lifespan, to being in good health. His feeling all along was, Arunachal looks after me, Arunachal looks after my body. If everybody else wants to play with it with these treatments, let them carry on. It's not my business, let them do what they like. The one thing he did draw the line at was amputation. At some point after the final operation had proved to be a failure, the Western medical doctors came along and said, Bhagavan, we can't do anything with the arm anymore. There's only one possibility that might save you, and that's amputation. At which point he put his foot down and said, no, I refuse to have my arm amputated. Why was never said. there's a tradition that you don't do that sort of thing to a jnani, but Bhagavan never gave that himself as an excuse. He just simply said no to that final treatment, and then progressively over the first few months of 1950 he became more and more enfeebled and finally passed away of systemic complications from the spreading of this sarcoma in his arm. The one story that I love from this period, and I tell it to everyone who asks me to talk about Bhagavan's final days, is a village herbalist came along and asked Bhagavan if he could treat the cancer on his arm. Bhagavan said yes. He let everybody have a go, and much to the horror of the Western doctors, who thought they were wasting valuable time by having this man they considered to be an unqualified village quack be Bhagavan's doctor. Bhagavan let this man mash up his leaves, put a herbal poultice on Bhagavan's arm, and they sat there for a few days waiting to see if it would make any difference. It didn't, because none of the treatments made any difference. Finally, the big shot Western doctors ganged up on this poor herbalist, and Bhagavan was persuaded to take this poultice off and go back to a more conventional Western treatment. Bhagavan shrugged and sighed and took it off his arm, and then he spotted a devotee who had a tumor on his neck. And he called him over and said, "The doctors won't let me wear this anymore, let's see if it will do you any good." So Bhagavan hated wasting things, hated throwing things away, and I think he would have been willing to have this thing on his arm indefinitely. And the story is that the person who Bhagavan put the poultice on survived the growth on his neck, and Bhagavan died. There is, for me, a subplot to all this. People were not listening to what Bhagavan himself was saying, let it run its course. They all wanted to intervene, they all wanted to take charge, be responsible, have a very intense treatment for him. Bhagavan, I think, knew that his body was declining, that there wasn't much possibility of ever getting better, and he just wanted it to run its course, eat his body up, and then he would pass away. But out of consideration for the devotees who wanted to express their devotion by trying out all these different activities, he allowed them to do all their treatments one by one, and when the last one failed, he was just left to pass away in peace in the Samadhi room just outside the new hall.
So Mr. GODMAN, is the Jnani, such as Ramana Maharshi, although he was in Samadhi, do you think he felt pain?
Almost certainly he did, but he sometimes said it was a kind of distant sensation, rather like feeling pain in a dream, rather than the kind of pain that you or I would experience. When his cancer was quite advanced, he had a sling, and if anybody accidentally touched it, there would definitely be a physical wincing. There was, you could provoke Bhagavan into going ouch by touching his arm, but at the same time he himself would be saying that there wasn't really the same level of pain that other people would experience if they had the same problem. That there was a knowledge of being the self, and in that state things that are going on in your body are known not to be you. So even though your nerve endings are connected and you can go ouch when people poke your elbow, at the same time there is a knowledge that the body is not you, that the pain is not yours, and somehow that gives you the knowledge, the experience and the conviction that your pain is something that's happening in a rather dreamlike state, and it's not really happening to who and what you really are.